Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming your first speaker this morning, the chairman of Deloitte, Mr. David Cruickshank.
Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and it's great to be here at the FinTech Festival. I think that opening security video must be the best I've ever seen of anywhere I've ever spoken. Very hard to compete with that first thing in the morning. Anyway, I'm going to talk a little bit about the future today, but first I'd just like to say, hey, how pleased I am to be back in Singapore. We were here 3 weeks ago with all of our new partners globally to celebrate their promotion to partnership. And we also celebrated the 30th birthday of our firm in Singapore. And it's fascinating to look back at where Singapore was 30 years ago, where things were a lot less developed than they are today. And you look at Singapore now, one of the world's major financial centers, center of digital expertise, and a center of FinTech. And it's tremendous, the journey that the country's been on over those 30 years. We're very pleased to have played our small part in that, as I'm sure many other organizations in the room are as well. So I've been asked to talk about the future. Now, I'm no futurist. There are those who predict that around our board table at Deloitte in 10 years' time, we will have robots. No idea whether that's true. Some might say that's the case now, but we don't really know. And as John Maynard Keynes once famously noted, the long run is a misleading guide to current affairs. The long run is a misleading guide to current affairs. But looking at the past may help put the future into context and see how far we've come. It's interesting to note that it was 300 years ago the Bank of England introduced cheques. But despite the proliferation of modern mobile payment methods, apps, and so on, it was only in 2016, for the first time in Britain, that more payments were made by contactless cards than by cheques. Cheque usage may be in decline, but 477 million of them were written in the UK in 2016. And only last week, the UK began a phased rollout of an image-based cheque clearing system that will reduce the processing time for cheques, handwritten cheques this is, from 6 weekdays to 1 day, and pave the way for the introduction of interbank mobile cheque deposits. So previous attempts in the UK to abolish cheques have met with all sorts of political disapproval, howls of protest from consumer groups and charities which still rely on paper-based donations. Now, for all of you in the room, this may sound like the dark age, and it is the dark age. 300 years ago, cheques were introduced, but they haven't been consigned to the history books yet. So it's easy to forget that contactless cards were first launched in 2007, and it took almost a decade for them to become mainstream. To begin with, they could only be used to buy coffees and sandwich bars and so on, and people viewed them with some suspicion. But now you can buy almost anything with contactless. And the real shift in behavior, I think, has really only happened over the last few years. And I think this illustrates the point worth remembering. People's habits are slow to change. iPhones have also been around for only 10 years. And although we're making increasing numbers of mobile payments every year, people are still concerned about security, their data, using their phones, what would happen if they're stolen or their batteries run out. And one of the downsides, of course, of offering customers all sorts of different payment solutions is the fragmentation this can cause, and customers lose track of spending habits. That said, the evidence of the massive take-up of new payment methods is there. By any measure, China is the world's leader in FinTech, especially in the area of mobile payments, online lending, and investment. And it's interesting, just a few reference points here to see how far we've come over the last while. The largest Chinese FinTech company, Ant Financial, has been valued at $60 billion. That's the same as UBS in Switzerland, the largest bank in Switzerland, and a very old established institution. Amazing when you consider where banking in China was 30 years ago. The FinTech juggernaut Tencent, which everybody here will be familiar with, was reported to have had the capacity to process 800 million payments every hour during the Chinese New Year. Just think about that. Phenomenal. Another comparison, Alipay can process 50,000 payments per second compared to 25,000 for the Visa cards that I have. And if you look at East Africa, where almost everybody has a phone, but many either have no or limited access to bank accounts, the majority of its population is subscribed to Vodafone's Safaricom mobile payment service, M-Pesa. Last year, 6 billion M-Pesa transactions were processed, 614 million during December alone, a rate of 529 a second. This kind of iterative development of service offering is, I feel, one of the distinguishing features of FinTech. And one of the reasons why the line I'm taking today is the future is not going to look totally unrecognizable to where we are today. Most innovation is not brand new. It happens all around us every day, occasionally unnoticed, sometimes unplanned, such as penicillin, or incremental, such as television. It was email rather than the internet, after all, that brought laptops to most people's desks. So disruption and change is taking place, but it's not overnight. It's more build with momentum. But having said this, why is FinTech significant now? Why are we all here now? Financial services technology is nothing new. However, three things are different, driving a renewed urgency and pace of transformation that you're all seeing here and you're all taking part in. Customer expectation of services is higher than ever, firstly. Secondly, barriers to entry for new participants in historically difficult to enter markets definitely getting lower. And thirdly, there's the threat of what a traditional competitor might do, teamed up with somebody who's an agile or an emerging player. This one shows the evolution of FinTech, 2014 to 2017. And this is based on research and surveys that our firm's done over the year. And it's interesting, again, looking back, as recently as 2014, major financial institutions did not view FinTech as a threat, only 3 years ago. Three biggest reasons for this safety were customer trust, institutional scale, and regulatory complexity produced too many barriers to entry. This false view of safety quickly disappeared by 2015, and the atmosphere of safety had changed to one of fear. One market participant called it a shift from complacency to paranoia, as observers saw an expanded risk to FinTechs taking the cream of their business away. The atmosphere of fear very quickly turned to opportunism, and in 2016, FinTechs and incumbents started to work together. Executives were eager to tout their FinTech hubs and venture funds and excited by the potential that innovative ideas gave them. And this has led to where we are today, which I think we're all experiencing, and you've all experienced here, a new normal. Collaboration in 2017 has seen incumbents and FinTechs and regulators address a changing industry, compete and collaborate and drive a new ecosystem. So how has FinTech impacted the industry over the last 3 years? Where's it succeeded? Well, I think two principal areas. FinTechs have really seized the initiative, defining the direction, shape, and the pace of innovation in almost every subsector of financial services. And they've succeeded both as standalone businesses, many of you here, and as alliance partners and collaborators with established groups. And secondly, FinTechs have reshaped customer expectations, setting new and higher bars of user experience, allowing traditional FinTech, financial services companies to compete on user experience with the likes of Apple and Google. What are the challenges still for FinTech? Well, you will all know about this in the room. Customer willingness to switch away from traditional providers has been highly difficult. Customer switching costs are high, and new innovations are often not sufficiently material to warrant a shift to a new provider, particularly as incumbents adapt what they're doing. And secondly, fintechs have sometimes struggled to create a new ecosystem that looks sufficiently different to where things are now. So, does everybody in the industry believe that things are changing? Despite the considerable innovation in the market, financial services executives still hold skepticism on the amount of change that will occur in the next 5 years. These are the results from a Deloitte survey that we did globally earlier this year in March of over 200 financial service executives in every part of the world. And amazingly, it shows that 47% of executives don't expect to see significant change in the next 5 years. And that will be a horror to all of you in the room, because I think you're all here because you do expect to see that change. And the executive expectation changes significantly by market and the type of financial institution. Insurance is the most resistant to change, where only 46% of executives expect to see significant change. However, for capital markets players, that number goes up to 68%. It's also very different by region. 62% of executives in Asia expect to see significant change. However, only 48% in North America see this coming. So, is FinTech all about technology, or is it about the agility to respond? To the extent that there will be change, everybody accepts that technology is driving it. In our survey of the financial executives, we asked respondents which force will have the greatest impact on financial services in the next year or two. And not surprisingly, 63% said technology would have the biggest force. However, 23% said that talent would need to change, and 15% said that operational transformation would also be key. But if you think it through, if there's big changes in technology, there's also going to have to be big changes in the talent model and big changes in the operating system. And I think those are two of the biggest consequences. And this is a key issue which I think we all have to address. We as advisors and all of you in the room as incumbents and as FinTech players. We had a survey last year, Deloitte's, this is not easy to get off the tongue, Deloitte's Global Digital Preparedness Survey, which recognized that agility is a key factor in addressing these emerging market forces, yet only 19% of the executives surveyed thought their firms were agile. So I think therein lies the big challenge, really. I think the incumbency, the difficulty, and reluctance to change. Most areas of business will change significantly, and what this slide shows is the significant changes by technology within 5 years in the green bars, and within 2 years in the dark blue bars, and the light blue bits are further out. And again, maybe not surprisingly, the areas of top impact are seen as products and product development, 54%, IT, 52%, customer interface, 51%. And in the product development, the subsets of that are products based on customer data, data usage, and risk-based opportunities. In IT, what they said was it was legacy systems, business needs, investment requirements, and risk and regulatory. And as far as the customer interface was concerned, it was multi-channel delivery, growing new customer segments, keeping existing customers, creating tailored experiences, and just getting a fuller picture of the customer overall. And if you think about it, these are all areas that are absolutely core to the being of every financial services institution. And all of this requires a change in culture that can cope with the scale and pace of change. And this means that financial institutions will need the right talent to be successful over the coming years. Do financial services executives believe they have this talent? Well, almost everybody thinks they're going to have a shortage. About 93% of our respondents expect a talent shortage in at least one area of their organization, and you can see the numbers reflected on the green bars there. Of that group, almost half think this shortage will hit in the next 2 years. The most significant areas being innovation, 94%, risk and compliance, 82%, and IT, 76%. So how to attract and retain the right talent to deal with all the changes that FinTech is bringing about, both in its own, but also to establish players, is going to be a key issue for CEOs, and also, I would say, for regulators, as everybody faces the change. So what will the next few years hold? With agility being critical and collaboration being the new normal for financial institutions, there are still more questions and uncertainties about the future than there are answers. And I think the 5 key questions are: front-end AI. How will the rise of digital identity impact the use of financial services around the world? Monetizing data flows, an issue dear to many of the hearts of the CFOs and CEOs in the room. How can firms extract the most revenues from the data available to them? How much will it cost to do that? Thirdly, technology and governance gap. How will financial services firms mitigate the risk when technology races ahead of management's abilities to understand the consequences? Fourthly, systemic transparency. How will the transparency built into the new systems impact on their design, participant roles, profit models, and so on? And cooperation problems. Can financial services firms use technology to solve long-running partnership and collaboration issues at the heart of the issue? And overlaying all of that back to the people again will create major, major shifts in the requirement of the workforces, with financial institutions probably having to recruit different sorts of people to some of the ones they have now, but also I think for the staff and people within those institutions to accept that they're probably going to have to change roles, change training many times during their career. I just want to finish on a really high note, because often people will talk about the challenges of technology and people displacement and so on. And there was a lovely story that I heard last week about a German e-commerce retailer, Otto, which has now moved to allow AI to order all its stock, no human intervention at all. So the AI predicts that what goods are likely to be sold within the next 30 days. It does it to something within a 90% accuracy, which is about 4 times where they were with human processes before. And the new system has reduced product returns by 2 million items per year. And this illustrates, I think, one of the key roles that AI can provide for a company. It's making existing processes work better. In this case, Otto's headcount hasn't changed at all. They've just got a lot more productive and a lot more profitable in what they're doing. So my conclusion, these are exciting and rapidly changing times for the fintech industry. As you can tell, I haven't grown up in fintech. I find it from the outside with clients I talk to absolutely fascinating, the pace of change, the possibilities that are there. I think this FinTech Festival is showcasing some of those tremendously well, and I know you're going to have a fantastic dialogue over the next day or so. And I think the comment on the screen there from Bob Iger, the Chairman and CEO of Walt Disney, the riskiest thing we can do is just to maintain the status quo, is a good byline for us all for the rest of the meeting. Thank you all very much.